Please do not be like me. Please do not read this book in public. I mean, look at the title. Everyone who saw me reading this alone in a cafe thought I was crazy for reading something like this because it literally says A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It looked like I was planning something. Please do not be like me, but definitely read this. It's about a murder that happened in a tiny town called Little Kilton, and 5 years later, after that murder has happened, this young high school girl has decided to make this local murder her school project. Which, what kind of school are you in who's allowing you such projects? Because I would like to do that. Not do the crime, guys, no, but like a true crime thing. I think we all love that for some reason. I think women are obsessed with true crime. I am I'm digressing. So Pip has decided to make this her school project. Another girl from her school, her senior, Andy Bell, was murdered by apparently or allegedly by her ex-boyfriend Sal Singh. And Sal isn't so much guilt over what happened, he commits suicide. So now when Andy goes out to solve this case and to understand who actually did it, because a part of her says that Sal did not do it. So of course she speaks to Sal's family, and Sal's brother ends up helping her with all of this, with her murder mystery. And oh my god, he is so cute. By cute, I mean he is so charming, so funny, so empathetic. Oof. I was in love with Ravi's character, and I'm not the only one on the internet. Case in point, if Ravi came to me and said, I hate you, I would just think, he said I and you in the same sentence. He knows that I exist. So now Ravi and Pip are going around and interviewing people, looking at, trying to gather evidence and all of it. And one thing that I really, really liked about this book is how visual it was. There are production logs, transcripts, maps, screenshots. The book, I loved reading this book. I finished it in 2 days. There's so many twists, and it's not too childish, also, like it's a YA novel. But even if you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whichever age group, you can still read it. So I would highly recommend for you to pick this up. And I am now so excited to read part 2 and part 3. Let's get into it. I have a bone to pick with everyone who said part 2 was boring. Did we not read the same book? I thought it was as interesting as part 1. I said what I said. So, in the end of part 1, we of course know that Pip ends up solving the murder, and now in part 2, she has started this podcast because everybody these days has a podcast. I have a podcast. Anyway, in part 2, she has created a podcast which basically tells everyone how she solved that murder, how she followed all of the clues, and how she took everybody's interviews. And she's now kind of become this local celebrity, your local detective, your local Nancy Drew. And in part 2, her friend's brother goes missing. So, of course, he asks her for help. The guy who goes missing is Jamie, and again, Pip is following clues. She's taking everybody's interviews. A lot, you see a lot of the same characters in part 1, of course, because it's a trilogy. I don't want to talk too much about the plot because I think then I'll end up giving you guys spoilers. So let's talk about characters and how the book was written. The first 150 pages are okay, a little mid. Like they did not have a lot of twists. I felt like the plot wasn't really going somewhere, but after 150 pages, the way the pace of the book picked up, and the last, I think the 30 pages of the book were mind blowing. Like, so, like the writer made you feel what Pip was feeling in those moments and how torn she is, how she's begging for, yeah, let's not go there, but the last 30 pages are very beautifully written. The sentences, the way they are broken up, the way Pip is taking each breath and thinking about everything, every sound around her. Beautiful, beautiful writing. In terms of characters, we don't see Ravi as much in part two, which is so disappointing because I really loved him in part one and I hope to see or read more of him in part two, but we still get parts of him. It's okay. The main guy who goes missing, Jamie, the I feel like the author did not really tell us. I mean, of course, she tells us about him, but I felt I couldn't really connect with that character. I didn't really care. Like, I was basically reading it for the plot, and I wasn't really hoping that, oh my god, Jamie's this and Jamie's that, and that I just couldn't feel so much for the character. But this other character, who honestly is only, how do I say it without giving you guys a spoiler? In the last 20-30 pages, a character is mentioned, and oh my god, I felt not just one character, actually two characters in the end, and you can you do really feel that you're torn between these two characters, and you feel for both of them. I wish the author had done the same for Jamie so that I, as a reader, could really feel something for him. But I would say if you're reading the trilogy, please don't skip part two, or if people are saying don't, yeah, part two is not that great, it is, please grab it. Again, if you want to buy this book, the link is in my description box. It's not an affiliate link, so I don't get enough views to have an affiliate link. So, yeah, but if you're looking for a good thriller, buy this. Almost everyone who's read the trilogy has raved about part 3. Now, in the first two parts, Pip was investigating other people, but in part 3, she's the subject herself. In the second part, we could see that she's gotten really famous because of her podcast, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and with internet fame comes a lot of trolls. Ask me, one of my reels went viral last year, and I sometimes still get hate comments on it. So in part 2, it was already established that now she's popular. In part 3, there is one specific troll that is always bothering her. He always writes one thing: who will look for you when you're the one who disappears? Because in every other part, she was looking out for other people. So she starts looking into this troll and finds out that he's a stalker. And then later, she gets to know that he's not just a stalker, he's a notorious serial killer. And this serial killer is now after Pip. Now, will he manage to kill her? You'll have to read the book to find out. The book does make you nervous at times because with every chapter, the killer is getting closer. And there are times when he's like, really, really close, in very close proximity to Pip, which made me nervous. Like, I could feel my heartbeat increase. In part 3, all of the parts are coming together. Some loose ends of part 1, part 2, characters or storylines that did not make sense maybe at the time. They're all coming together in part 3, which just shows that the all of the books are so well thought out by the author. Now, one thing is part 3, I don't think should be considered a YA novel. Part 1 and 2, absolutely. Part 3, absolutely not. There is so much mention of PTSD in this. It's very dark, it's very heavy. And I understand that because in part 2, the book ends at a very sensitive note. Pip sees things that she should have not seen. But I think in part 3, the PTSD part is also mentioned way too much. Like, and I'm not trying to demean what other people go through, but in the book, okay, we've established that she's going through all of these things, but it is mentioned so frequently that I found myself just like sometimes skimming through lines because I was like, yep, okay, she's going in that flashback or she's thinking about something on those lines. Another thing that I did not enjoy about this book was the lack of visual material. Like in part one and part two, you could see Pip's production logs, her transcripts, a lot of those things. Part three did not really have that much, and I understand like Pip is kind of investigating or looking into herself, but still, I feel like that is what made part one and two so enjoyable. In part three, I did not get any, hardly got any of it. So, and in part three, Pip has suddenly also become this pill popping, I don't want to go to therapy person, which is why I think it should not be considered a YA novel. Also, Ravi and Pip miss a very obvious clue about who the serial killer could be, and I was so surprised by that because I guessed it. Was it because of all of the training that Pip gave me in part one and part two? Maybe. But when they missed it, I was like, how? How have you missed it? And I don't know if the author did this deliberately, where, Pip, and because Pip and Ravi were so nervous about the entire situation, because Pip this time could be the victim, they were not really thinking about it. Or was it because Pip was not in the right frame of mind? I don't know, but that just felt very off. So, yeah, that was my review on part 3. All in all, I would give the entire trilogy 4.5 out of 5. If you're in a reading slump or if you're looking for a thriller slash suspense slash murder mystery, you can definitely go for this. And also, you can read part 1 and part 3 separately if you don't want to read the entire thing. Part 2, I think you would only enjoy if you've read part 1. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free. Subscribing is free, but it helps me keep the channel afloat. And if you subscribe, I'd be able to come here and keep giving you guys great book recommendations. And then you would not only see content from me, but from other book channels also that are out there creating great content. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.